Hello everybody and welcome back to Triple Crown Wargaming with me, the Chieftain, in yet another one of our first impressions, or army run-throughs, I suppose. Army exclusives aren't really a term for this. I'll say first impressions, that's what's probably going to sound the image, of the new Legacy factions that were dropped about, at the time of recording, about a week and a half ago, if my memory serves me properly here. And today we're going to be going over the new Chaos Dwarves. And they are now actually called Chaos Dwarfs. They're no longer the Legion of Asgore. Gone are those days in which you got really confused when you saw an army being called Legion of Asgore and not Chaos Dwarfs, because it just was a bit weird. But anyway, we're going to be going through a couple of sort of the standout points from the Legacy PDF from about the Chaos Dwarfs, and seeing what I think are going to be good about them and what could be pretty spicy going on down the line for the army in itself. Now, the PDF, as we all know, is Legacy faction. This is it for the army, as far as we're aware. The castles aren't going to be getting any sort of updates from this. They're not going to be getting any model release. Or I don't know about model releases. They might get some model releases, hopefully. It'd be quite nice to see them come back for a bit. But in terms of any FAQs or anything, no, they won't be getting that. The PDF factions are as they are. Upsetting, but it does mean that you can rely on these guys to stay as they are for a foreseeable future. So as we go into the Legacy Army list, we're going to look. The first thing I'm going to bring up at the point in this video is the Grand Army composition list. Now, nothing too crazy out of the way in terms of the usual stuff. You got your 0 to 1 Source of Profit or Infernal Castellan, which are now like Lord level combat lords for Chaos Dwarfs. The Infernal Castellan used to be your hero BSB, and you only ever used to have a singular non-special character lord choice, which was the Source of Profit. It's nice that the Infernal Castellan has been upgraded to a Lord, and then Infernal Seneschals are now the equivalent hero choice, which I do think is quite a nice change. It's nice to see that you don't have to take a level 4 that could go down a hole as it was in 8th edition as your singular Lord choice. You now have the option to take a full combat build if you really want to, which I think is quite nice. I don't think you're going to do it because I still think the magic is still quite important in the old world, not as devastating as it once was. We've discussed a lot of times, but it's quite important for the dispelling aspects. But the main point I'm going to bring up in the Grand Army composition list for the Chaos Dwarfs is the inclusion of Black Orc bosses, and if you take and 0 to 1 Black Orc mobs in your core section. Now, this is an inclusion I was not expecting out at all when I was thinking about my Chaos Dwarfs, as they were sort of sitting there waiting to be their rules to be released. The inclusion of the Black Orcs in the army is quite nice. It means you no longer have to rely on combinations of Infernal Guard and Hobgoblin Cutthroats to make up your core choice. You can now just ditch the Hobgoblin Cutthroats altogether and just take Black Orcs in your core alongside your Infernal Guard. We'll get to Hobgoblins in a second later on in the video, but it is quite a big thing to see these guys in there. Now, the Black Orcs themselves. Let's grab the rules out for the Black Orcs, because I do think they're actually quite good as they are. It does say Black Orc boss, so it doesn't specify which Black Orc boss you can take. The section in the Ravening Hordes book says Black Orc bosses, and that includes Black Orc war bosses or Black Orc big bosses. So from what I can see, you could legit take a Black Orc war boss in your army. I would see no issue. I don't know why you would. If you wanted to take a level 4, you would just take a Source of Profit. But the fact it does seem you can take a Black Orc war boss in your Chaos Dwarf army seems a little odd to me. But in terms of the actual Black Orcs themselves, they are pretty spicy. They're pretty good infantry-wise. Now, infantry is not in the same sort of way it was in 8th edition. Infantry's taken a little bit of a backfield role and a sort of anvil role to a lot of the fast-moving heavy cavalry sections of an army. The Black Orcs do this quite well. They come with full plate as standard, and they take a shield, so you get that nice 3-up arm save on your infantry, which is quite rare these days, to be honest, having 3-up arm save on your infantry. And they get to take additional weapons or great weapons as they want, and they also have Motley Crew, so they can mix and match those weapons to be used as you see fit. Now, Furious Charge, so they get +1 attack, if they charge 3 or more inches. Choppers, so they get +1 strength and -1 AP in the first round of combat, I believe. Let me double check that for you guys. Choppers during During a turn in which it charged, a model with special roll may reroll any rolls to wound of a natural 1 and improves their arm piercing characteristic of the weapon by 1. So that's a pretty good rule, to be honest. Quell Impetuosity might do well. I can't say for some man. Can't remember reading to see if anything in the Chaos Dwarf army had Impetuous, but the fact that Quell Impetuosity could affect that is quite nice as well. Close Order, Du Bois, and Ignore Panic. So all in all, Black Orcs themselves are an interesting addition to a Chaos Dwarf army. One that I'm quite fond of. I actually quite like the idea of running my Infernal Guard next to some Black Orcs. From a fluff perspective, it might not make a lot of sense. This might be pre-revolution, I suppose, of the Black Orcs revolting against the Chaos Dwarfs overseas. It could be that sort of line. It could be exactly what that is, to be honest, because this game is set about 300 years before 8th edition. So it could honestly be that sort of thing. We don't know what the design elements were behind including them, but I for one, am quite fond of it. So on to the next unit I'm going to talk about, which is going to be Hobgoblins. I spoke about them about 5 minutes ago, roughly. The Hobgoblins themselves, and I don't think this is going to be a decent chat about Hobgoblins. They seem to have gone down, especially with the fact, as I just said, Black Orcs can now be included as your core choices. So Hobgoblins, they've still pretty much got the exact same stat line as they did in 8th edition, although they have lost, I believe, 2 points of leadership for a standard cutthroat, whereas the boss has sort of lost a point of leadership by being leadership 5. So at leadership 4 base, they are pretty garbage in terms of that, and it's only compounded by the fact that the Hobgoblins themselves have the levies special rule. So levies means models with special rule cannot use the inspiring presence rule of the army's general, nor the hold your ground rule of a battle standard bearer. However, the levies don't cause panic in the exact rules of it. Therefore, units that do not have the special rule are not required to take a panic test when a friendly unit of levies breaks and flees from combat. So your Chaos Dwarves naturally don't care about them. What's to care about the Hobgoblins? But they will cause it in other Hobgoblins, which can be of an issue. But the leadership can be sort of alleviated by the fact they have Warband, which is +1 leadership per rank bonus of your unit. So you could go back up. You could get them back up to leadership 6. It's still not great with the fact you can't use your general leadership or your BSB's rerolls for panics, breaks, and rallies. They're not all that grand, if I'm honest. They've gone down in my eyes a little bit. They can still take short bows, they can still take light armor, and they can still have the full command. But overall, they're not all that necessary. I only ever used to take them in my armies because I had to make up core, and I didn't really have enough or didn't want to take more Infernal Guard. They do have the backstab special rule, which is if this unit with special rule is engaged with an enemy's unit flank or rear arc, it may reroll any failed rolls to hit made against the enemy unit. Nice little bonus. I wouldn't say it makes up for the fact of their horrendous leadership, but it's nice to have anyway, and you could try and get a cheeky flank charge or recharge of them, but at strength 3 with no AP, I don't think I'd bother them in the army at all. Moving on, and we're going to talk about quite an interesting change, which is going to be the choo-choo train itself, or the Iron Demon as it is actually known. The Iron Demon has been upgraded to be heavy chariot these days, so its impact hits are at -2 AP, which is pretty decent, seeing as there's D6 +1 impact hits as standard. Other than that, it can replace its Steam Cannonade as always could do with Skullcracker, which in this game I honestly would think about doing. If I'm honest, it seems to be pretty decent. We'll get to that in a second. And it can also be Hellbound. Hellbound is still a rule. It doesn't exactly do what it used to do. Hellbound model with special rule. A Hellbound model has a 6+ ward save against any wounds suffered that were caused by non-magical enemy attacks, and gains both the fear and magical attack special rules. If the model already has the fear special rule, it instead gains terror. Additionally, once per game, a Hellbound model may reroll 1 scatter dice or artillery dice. However, should a Hellbound model ever have to make a roll on a misfire table, it suffers -1 modifier to the result. So no longer will Hellbound increase your toughness to 8 and increase your wounds by 1 for a steam train. For the Iron Demon, I'd say it's only really useful if you're going to be taking the Steam Cannonade, as you get to reroll on the misfire dice. The Steam Cannonade in itself is
pretty decent. It's range 18-inch range, not that great. It's strength 5, -1 AP, armor bane 1, so it can be pretty decent there. It's got its cannonade rule, which we'll go into in a second, and it's cumbersome. Now, cumbersome, I have the rule book here right next to me. 2 seconds, guys. Cumbersome, weapons with special rule cannot be used when making a stand or shoot reaction. So you can't just shoot your steam cannonade into a unit and just expect to try and kill them off as much as you can with a stand shoot reaction. You have to take the charge in itself. But the Iron Demon is pretty much in combat is where it wants to be. In cannonade rule in itself, it's basically you roll 2 artillery dice, and that's the amount of hits you roll. That's how many shots you get to roll the hit. If you roll 1 misfire on artillery dice, you suffer -1 to hit instead of rolling on the normal misfire table. But if you roll 2 misfire results on your artillery dice, then you just suffer a wound instead. So it's not a bad idea to take Hellbound on the on the Iron Demon, because it lets you reroll on the artillery dice, and you don't actually roll on a misfire table. So the -1 modifier to the misfire result isn't all that worrisome for yourself. But as I said, I would probably think about upgrading this thing to have the steam to upgrade its steam cannonade to the Skull Cracker, which has had a bit of a glow up these days. So as standard, the Iron Demon for 275 points is a chunk of change. It gets D6 +1 impact hits, and it's D3 +1 stomp attacks. If you take the Skull Cracker, the Iron Demon equipped with Skull Cracker replaces impact hits to D6 from D6 +1 to 2D6 +2. And it gains the armor bane or 1 special rule on its impact hits as well. So the train wants to be in combat, if I'm honest. If you take this upgrade, I mean, it has to be in combat. It's not going to do anything else outside of combat. But the fact you're going to upgrade your impact hits to 2d6 +2 means that you're going to do as much damage as possible on the turn in which you charge. Now, it is a little bit slow. It's movement 5. It doesn't have swift stride. It does have lumbering destruction. An Iron Demon cannot march, so you may roll a d6 and adds the result to the model's movement characteristic. However, a natural 1 is rolled when making this roll. Something has gone wrong deep within the infernal machine, rendering it immobile. The Iron Demon halts immediately and cannot move again for the remainder of this turn. So you're only moving 5 inches a turn, which is very slow. And getting into combat may be a little bit difficult for yourself. But if you do get it into combat, the impact hits from the standard 1 or the 2d6 +2 impact hits are pretty damn good. And the fact it has D3 +1 stomp attacks now, and the fact that stomp attacks affects everything, and I mean everything, the grinding wheels means the stomp attacks made by the Iron Demon have an arm piercing characteristic of -2, which makes them even better. However, it cannot be used against models whose troop type is Behemoth. They're simply too large. So you can even use it, by all accounts, you can use it against monstrous creatures as well, which makes it even better. The Iron Demon has had a bit of a glow up in my mind. It was alright in 8th edition, but I think it's gone a little bit better in the old world. On to the next one, which is a personal favourite of mine, which is going to be the cows, the great Tauruses themselves of the Chaos Dwarves. They are still a force to be reckoned with, and the big Bale Taurus is no joke, as we all know it would be. So they are behemoths, so they do have a natural -2 to the armor set to the saves, which is very good. Although it does say the trampling hooves themselves are -2 AP. Oh no, sorry, it's the stomp attacks have -2 to armor piercing. That's my bad. Sorry about that, guys. The trampling hooves of the Tauruses have natural -1 AP to -1 armor save. So they're not that bad at getting through armor. They're not the ones the tin can opens they used to be. But having a -1 is still pretty good in an edition which armor isn't all that grand as it is anyway, as it used to be. As I said, they still fly. I'm going to talk mainly about the Bale Taurus because that is the big one you're going to be taking. It still has Blazing Body, still has Born of Fire, Close Order, Fly 9, Furious Charge. So if it charges over 3 inches, it gets additional attack. Large target, it has D3 +1 stomp attacks, pretty decent. Swift Stride and Terror. All very good. It's still, it has so Born of Fire is a Bale Taurus or a Great Taurus as a 3 at ward save against any wounds suffered that were caused by an attack that's Flaming Attack special rule. Very good. It has lost its breath weapon, which is a sad point to note, but breath weapons aren't as good as they used to be with the idea of partial hits of a template. That does limit their usefulness, so it ain't all that much of a sadness to lose it. Blazing Body in itself is a rule. I think it still basically works the same way as it used to in 8th edition. At the start of every combat phase, any model, friend or foe that is in base contact with this model that does not also have this special rule suffers a single strength 3 hit with an AP of nothing. This hit has flaming attack special rule. So it has gone down a point in strength, and it has lost its armor piercing aspect to it, because it used to be strength 4, which used to give you a -1 to your armor. So the fact they've lost that, and they've lost the point of strength, means the blazing body doesn't really do as much damage as it used to do, sorry. And also the note underneath the notes, any wounds lost due to these hits do not count towards combat results. So even then, it's lost a lot of impact from that. The blazing body just won't do as much. So the cow has lost some of its combat potential, but I think the idea of flying monster mounted characters are very good, because you can stick your source of profit on one, and they do become, I believe, toughness 6 with 7 wounds, I'm going to say. 2 seconds, let me double check this here. They become toughness 6 with 7 wounds. It ain't the most obscene stat line out there. We have seen worse ones, such as like the Chaos Dwarf and the Chaos Dragon, which has 10 wounds of toughness 6. Very obnoxious to try and deal with. But it's still not too bad all the same. I do think the flying monsters all have a purpose in an army that can take them. And the last point I am going to talk about in today's sort of faction focus, that's the words I was looking for earlier on, is generally the Deathshrieker rocket launcher and the Dreadquake mortar. Now I'm going to talk about these both at the same time, because they're really, the bits and pieces about these are going to be the same. In fact, they are probably some of the best artillery in the game at this point in time. Namely for the fact that they retained the multiple wounds D6 rule. Now that is very important, because a lot of artillery out there has lost the amount of damage it does do. Regular cannon, for instance, from the Dwarves is D3 damage. A great cannon from the Empire is D3 plus 1 damage. And a lot of stone throws are D3 plus 1 damage as well. The Dreadquake mortar and the Deathshrieker rocket launcher have retained multiple wounds D6, so they are going to be crucial in the ability to take out your opponent's big monsters themselves. So if you are taking a Chaos Dwarf army, I would seriously consider taking a couple of, especially Deathshrieker rocket launchers. They've gone up by 20 points, but they've basically, the demolition rocket they used to be has been incorporated into the Deathshrieker rocket they used to be able to fire as well. So demolition rocket itself is now a stone thrower. So it's now the, I believe it's the small blast, it's 3-inch blast with strength 3, strength 6, no AP, -3 under the hull, armor bane 1, bombardment, cumbersome, move or shoot, and multiple wounds D6. Now, being bombardment and the fact that it's not a large target does hinder its line of sight issues. A lot of stone throwers do have this at the moment in terms of line of sight, so you are going to see a lot of indirect fire. But if it does manage to get hits on a big monster under the hull, the D6 wounds are going to hurt a lot, even if it does struggle a little bit to wound with the fact it's only strength 6. The Infernal Incendiaries are pretty much the same. They don't have any strength bonuses. It's strength 3 across the entire template, but it has flaming attacks, and it's also a large blast. So you're going to be hitting a lot more models under the template, but maybe not causing as much damage. But I think the crucial fact that the Demolition Rocket has multiple wounds D6 means you're probably going to see it. The Dreadquake mortar in itself is roughly the same thing. It doesn't have large target, so even though the model is absolutely ginormous, so you are going to have some line of sight issues with it. But the fact that the Dreadquake mortar still has the multiple wounds D6, bombardment, it did lose the armor bane 1. The strengths of everything is still the same as Deathshrieker, strength 3, strength 6, minus nothing, -3. But it does have the unique rules of Quake, which is until your next start of turn subphase, any unit, friend or foe, that was within 2d6 inches of the central hole of the blast template after scattering suffers a -1 modifier to its movement characteristic and cannot use a swift stride special rule. So this is going to be not so much your damaging, so your monster hunting artillery piece, that will probably be left to the Deathshrieker, if I'm honest. This will be used as a tool to slow down your opponent's armies. So especially if you're playing Bretonnians, the loss of Swift Stride is quite large for a Bretonnian army. It does mean that they aren't going to be charging as far and as ludicrously fast across the battlefield as they would want to. 165 points. It has dropped a fair amount of points as well. And I'd probably consider taking the Ogre Loader as it used to be anyway, because it still has slow reload. Which is, if this weapon shot during the previous turn, it may be unable to shoot during this turn. Roll D6 before shooting this weapon. On a roll of 1 to 2, the slow and ponderous reload process has not yet been completed, and the weapon does not shoot. If the Dreadcrate Mortar has an Ogre loader, you may apply a +1 modifier to this roll. So rather than it just being you ignore the slow reload rule, the Ogre loader just means that you're going to pass it on a 2+ rather than a 3+. And it also gives you +2 wounds and +2 attacks. So that's pretty decent. Pretty decent, to be honest. I would consider taking it. It is 20 points. They're not exactly cheap. So 185 points, but even then, it's not the most horrifically expensive artillery piece in the world. But that's going to be it. So yeah, overall, Chaos Dwarves seem to have got a bit of a, I wouldn't say glow up. They were still pretty decent, but they've got a little bit of a loving from Games Workshop being the Legacy faction. I know a lot of the Legacy factions seem a bit lackluster at first sight, but the Chaos Dwarves do seem pretty decent from what I can gather here. But that's going to be it for me today. Let me know what you think of the Chaos Dwarves down below in the comments. If you think I've missed any crucial details about some of the other units in the armies. We all know, we're all crying the loss of the Kadai Destroyer. It is quite a hurtful thing to see. I do own 2. Well, I could got 2 converted Kadai Destroyers. That probably won't see the light of day unless I use them in a 8th edition fantasy game. But I don't know when that's going to happen. But let me know of the other changes to Chaos Dwarves that you liked, you like the look of, that you think could be really good, that you think they are for the worse, if you're honest. And let us know below in the comments. But until next time, guys, thank you very much for listening to me, and we'll see you later.
Remember to tag your friends and like, subscribe and share. Then head over to triplecrownwargaming.com and become a Knight of the Realm today.
What are you doing, mate?
You alright?